What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Late Round Fantasy Football Show. Way too early running back rankings edition. We're going to talk about last weekend's games, and spoiler alert, we're going to talk a little bit about some weather because it affected the games, and now it's affecting late round. Will we survive? Honestly, I don't know. Stick around. It's a Late Round Fantasy Football Show next. Welcome in. David Kitchen, COO of Late Round, with JJ Zachariason, CEO of Late Round. JJ, I noticed you're not wearing a hat
today. Yeah, no hat today. Last
because you were bullied last week.
Last week I was bullied into not wearing a hat because I still haven't gotten my haircut. But given what I'm trying to do is, since we're going out to San Francisco, I want to time the haircut properly, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't want to get a haircut every 2 weeks up until that point. And so I haven't gotten a haircut. Like, it's been like a week over basically. But now we have this winter storm about to hit you and then me, you being in Nashville, me being in Charlotte. And it's getting icier and icier out there for our forecast for you and me. So I'm going to let it be known. I'm going to try to get, because I got Friday's episode that I got to do on the things that I missed. I haven't finished that one up yet. And then I got to try to finish the Tuesday episode before the weekend hits so that you guys have at least that content out there, because I don't know what this power situation is going to look like in Charlotte next week.
Same in Nashville. These weather models keep on going up and down. And I knew is like just the clickbait. What happens in the South is that you get these reports of snow, and I'm talking about everybody goes to the grocery store and gets milk and bread and eggs. Yesterday, I saw like, okay, this is actually going to happen. So I'm thinking I'm going to get ahead of it, and I'm going to go to Lowe's and get a propane heater. And then Holly, my wife, was like, "Can you get a can of sweetened condensed milk?" And for those that live up north, they think I'm weird. And my mom was born upstate New York. She was a New Yorker, so I get it. But snow cream is a thing down here in the South where you put condensed milk in cream and make snow cream. Some people think it's gross. It's just what we do.
Back in the day, because growing up in Pittsburgh, you just get crushed. Like we had blizzards, we had tons of snow growing up. And back in the day, we would put soda to all the non, that section of the United States people. We would just pour that into the snow and just eat that. It's a lot easier than what you guys put like vanilla extract in there and stuff.
Yes.
It's crazy.
You guys.
It's like a kitchen outside.
Some sprinkles. You just have to make sure the bowl's clean. But I will say this: my $2 can of sweetened condensed milk, I saw all these. It's middle of the afternoon. I see all these blue hairs at the grocery store, and they're getting stuff, and I'm like, it's packed. It is packed. I'm like, I'm not gonna let them beat me. So
Printed.
I got my stuff. So $2 condensed milk turned into $200 worth of groceries, and that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, look, these like you said, these models are the crazy thing right now is that the models have been trending up, and so like the Charlotte forecast, for instance, it's like way less snow, and everyone's like, "See, the meteorologists were wrong," but they don't realize that there's a ton of ice that's now coming, and that's way worse than snow. It's way worse, guys. Like, you do not. This is when we get power out. Like, I might not even be able to watch the championship games this weekend. That has crossed my mind more than you would even like comprehend.
I have not even thought about that angle, but you're right.
That's one of the things I'm thinking about, that more than the amount of jackets my kids have. Like I'm worried about watching these games.
All right. We've got 18 days until Super Bowl LX. I love that I can say Super Bowl in here because of our partnership with the NFL. Like, I don't have to worry about like the big game.
The big game.
Yeah. It's Super Bowl, 92 days until the NFL draft in Pittsburgh, JJ. And then I already started a counter for the NFL season, 232 days.
We don't need to. There's so much stuff we have to get done before that. We don't need to think about that.
Hey, 232 days. That's a long time. But again, this is a this is an interactive show. And JJ mentioned last week with the caveat, it's a playground for the off season. Here's what I would say. We're going to the Super Bowl in 2 weeks. Let us know like what kind of content you might want out of us. Because really, this is the playground where JJ says, don't take this too serious right now.
Just the good takes.
Things can
Correct
change.
takes you can take seriously.
It's like the Bills situation where when we look back on it, we better know that there are receipts that are out there, and so interact with us during the show, after the show, leave comments. We would definitely appreciate it. And with that, JJ, let's go ahead and get into today's news.
Today's fantasy news.
All right, we've already talked a little bit about the winter weather and will we survive. Here's my question, JJ, just for you. What is your opinion on like weather games in the NFL? Like last weekend kind of sucked with all the snow and everything. I wanted a dome.
But here's the thing. I think that teams that are in those environments, because obviously if you're playing in those environments, that means that you have home field advantage, right? And teams that then are like have that home field can create their and make their roster, surround it with that in mind and create it with that in mind. And so like, to me, in my opinion, like obviously, defense was huge in that New England and Houston game with all the turnovers and stuff. But like, to me, the Texans not having a very good and established run game was actually a pretty big deal in that game. And so like, might not have been a bigger deal if the, circumstances from a weather perspective were a little bit different. Same thing with Chicago. It's like, to me, the weather stuff is an advantage to the home team, just kind of inherently. You can say that both teams are kind of dealing with it, but one team is a little bit more used to it just in general, just naturally. And then not only that, they have the crowd and the home field advantage naturally embedded to that too. So I don't know, people who are all calling for domes and whatnot, like, yes, could it be like more entertaining football from like the standpoint of like the best team is definitely winning? Sure. But you look at what happened over the weekend. Can you say that the better team didn't prevail in those contests and in those games? Like I thought I think that the more complete, like if you're looking for the most complete team to win the Super Bowl, which number one, football might not be the sport for you just because there's going to be some variance. There's going to be some wacky things going on. Really, sure. Sports in general. Go watch the NBA. That's my, if you want predictability, just go watch the NBA. But regardless, like to me, the Rams are the more complete team than the Bears right now. As much as like the Bears story is great. And I love, low key, just love how angry people get at the Bears and how angry Packers fans are at the Bears for Ben Johnson saying what he did in the locker room last weekend. And, people hating on Caleb Williams because he paints his nails and such. And it's like, come on, guys, just like watch the dude play football, watch these guys play football. It's a great story and it's really entertaining to watch. And that's what we should be caring about. And so, Caleb Williams has that clutch gene, and it's just really fun to see how this Bears team is going to come back and get a W. And so like, they're entertaining to watch. But I do think that they were still kind of like a year away, and this wasn't necessarily going to be their season to really go the distance. The Rams team is incredibly complete. Like if you look across the board, they probably have the most complete team. I don't know if they're the best team remaining because I think Seattle's really, really strong. But, in Seattle, obviously playing in San Francisco, I sent you and Gadula a message about that where I'm like how, number one, how bad are the Eagles that they weren't able to beat the 49ers? But number two, that's more or less what I expected to happen to the 49ers. Not to, to down, like Kyle Shanahan did a masterful job this year, given all the injuries they suffered, but they had so many injuries that you knew it was going to catch up to them at some point. And Seattle's just a really, really good team. So, nothing, obviously there wasn't that much weather and stuff happening there, but then the New England game, like New England's probably a better team than Houston because quarterback is a difference maker there between the two. But Drake May didn't play like a great game. He just made the throws when he needed to make the throws, right? Like he obviously had turnover issues and all that kind of stuff. So like, to me, I'm not trying to make weather be like this massive differentiator of like why this team advanced and why this team, didn't advance. to me, it's all part of it, like the beauty of this game, and all part of like why we love playoff football and why we love December football, because you have these environments that you really don't get in other sports. Like this is the one sport where you do get to experience that.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, but the Dolphins GM was talking about how he wants the team to be better in the cold. Like they want to build his team to be better in the cold because they've got Buffalo, New England, and the Jets.
These teams are inevitably at some point going to have to play a game in that kind of environment, even if it's deep in the regular season or obviously if it's in the playoffs. But, I think you have to like keep that kind of stuff in mind. Now, do I think that there are narratives that are way overblown about weather? Like this quarterback can't do X, Y, Z. Like, yes. Do I think CJ Stroud might suck in bad weather? Yes. Also, yeah.
Gosh.
Yes.
I don't.
That was a pretty rough performance.
His throwing motion. It began to anger me how he just threw the ball behind every single receiver that he targeted.
I want to give him the benefit of the doubt from the standpoint of like the offensive line's been bad all year, as we know. Nico Collins was out. Dalton Schultz got hurt early in that game. He's thrown to to a couple rookies and Christian Kirk, who, Kirk isn't some stud. But man, I'm a little concerned about Stroud long term at this point.
Yeah, but so are the Texans because he's entering his year 5 season.
Yeah,
too.
bigger picture stuff. Do I think that they're definitely in purgatory, quarterback purgatory? I think that there's at least some possibility that that's the case. But it's too early for me to like really. I haven't looked at this stuff enough to have like a really strong take. But I do think that CJ Stroud might not be the answer. Like that's at least part of this discussion right now and part of the range of outcomes.
The fall from grace that he had since his rookie season. So, I mean, this will be his 4th year. And after this year, they have to decide if they're going to let him go or, extend him that 5th year. So,
yeah, I mean, and I'm of the belief from like a team building standpoint to not force the issue if you don't have to force the issue, because you can try a Sam Darnold type approach. You can try some of those other approaches of just kind of getting, a decent enough replacement level player with a shorter contract and not have to lock that player in, because that can be devastating to a franchise. I think the Panthers are in a very similar situation with Bryce Young right now, where it's like, what do you do? You would almost rather the quarterback be horrible so that that you can just completely move on.
I didn't know that we were going to go down this path, but it won't be because of a lack of weapons for Houston too. They got a name that I had just really forgotten about recently. Tank Dell is going to be back for next season, and they've got all these other receivers, so they've got decent weapons. It's not like it's
the line's the biggest problem there.
Yeah,
and you can't. Look, I touted Woody Marks a lot in fantasy this past year, both from like the draft guide standpoint and in-season standpoint, and adding him and buying him at certain points. But at the same time, that was very much a volume-based, competition-based decision. Woody Marks is not a bell cow back. Like I think he's pretty good, even though his metrics don't show that. Like I think that he could be a really good change of pace and receiving back, which is how I mean, go read his prospect profile on the prospect guide from last year. Like the Zap model liked him. He's a little bit older, but he had really good receiving numbers. The Mike Leach stuff definitely played a little bit of a role there because of him playing under him, and that, his system really favoring running backs and such. But regardless, like Woody Marks is just not a player that they need a bigger bodied running back to complement him. He was in the blue medical tent every game, essentially. But the receivers are there. They got to boost up that offensive line. And if you surround CJ Stroud with a really good environment, I think he could be okay enough, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah. The Texans are also obviously fine on defense. And that's why you would think in the draft, they're going to address offense again with whatever they need to do. All right. Let's get on to the rest. Do you have anything else about the divisional games before we move on?
No, I mean, I thought that they were good. Like I said, I think that I wish the Bills would have won from like an entertainment standpoint, because of having another divisional game in the, without Jarrett Stidham would have been, I still think that people are brushing off the Broncos too quickly and too much.
Yeah, same.
But regardless, like I do think New England should be favored, and I'm expecting New England to win, but I think that people are just like, oh, they're going to walk all over them. And it's like, I'm not like quite there, just given Bo Nix being what Bo Nix is. And, he's not necessarily the most established yet. But yeah, I mean, like I think that the world outside of Denver and New England probably, I guess, and Seattle and LA, because no one would want Josh Allen to still be in the playoffs, but people would probably rather have Buffalo in the AFC Championship.
I was wanting Bears and Bills just because I thought those fan bases would be fun in the Super Bowl. All right, but you said the Bills would be from an entertainment standpoint. I don't know if you could have any more entertainment than what we have had over the past 48 hours there in Buffalo. So let's get to some of the Bills Mafia drama. McDermott fired. They keep Billy Beane and give him like another title, like president of operations. And then today they had a press conference where effectively they put the Keon Coleman pick on the coaching staff
and
not on Beane. Keon Coleman is still on this team, JJ. And they're basically like, that wasn't me.
Yeah. The Brandon Beane stuff is wild to me because to me, I sent a tweet out about this. Like, I think that you could make the argument that McDermott should have been fired, but I probably would have given him another year because I don't think the roster is that strong. Now, people often like go to the extremes and go very black and white when it comes to team building and roster building and not blaming the coach. You know, I talked about this a little bit with like Tomlin last week, where it's not like he has zero input on who they're drafting and what that roster makeup is. So McDermott obviously is playing a role there. But to me, Brandon Beane has not put together that strong of a team. I mean, I think I saw the tweet out there about the number of Pro Bowls since Josh Allen of drafted players since Josh Allen was there, and everyone's like, "Well, the Pro Bowl isn't the way that you should judge how good or bad a player is." But it's like, okay, but it gets you directionally in the right place, you know, in terms of like how good or bad. He's had like 2 Pro Bowlers over the last or since 2018, since that draft. That he's drafted, which is horrendous. I mean, it's just, it's very bizarre to me. And there's a lot of finger pointing. You know, I've seen Beane talking to local radio there, and there's a clip that went around last year with around
the draft.
Yeah, about the wide receivers and stuff and how they were questioned, which they were, you know, Jeremy over there up in Buffalo, he was asking a very reasonable question about the wide receiver play. And and Beane's response is essentially getting angry and saying that it's ridiculous that all these fans and people keep asking about why. This is back in April, mind you, asking about the wide receivers when they were averaging over 30 points per game last year, et cetera, without the idea in the back of his head. It's like, oh, maybe this could be better. Maybe 30. Yes, we're averaging 30 points per game, but maybe this could be a little bit better. And maybe we're asking Josh Allen to do some unsustainable things. And in my opinion, Kitchen, that game in Denver, I sent a tweet about this after the game, making a joke that next year they're going to get Alan Lazard and Khalif Raymond or something like that. And people were getting really upset because Josh Allen obviously turned the ball over a lot in that game. But in my opinion, when a quarterback doesn't have literally any, I mean, Khalil Shakir is good, but he's limited. He's a slot dude. Like, we know that. When a quarterback doesn't have those kinds of receiving weapons, he's going to end up trying to do too much, especially when he's of the caliber of Josh Allen, who can do so much outside of the pocket. And so I think that played a role. Like, it had to trickle down. Now, Josh Allen's not blameless. He didn't play that amazing of a game. And obviously there were some controversial calls and all that kind of stuff. But the dude is throwing to Mecole Hardman and Brandon Cooks. Okay. And you're like, oh, but they were banged up. Okay. Josh Palmer's any better? Like, we got to be realistic here. They have not built that offense. You know, the line's good and James Cook is great and the tight ends are fine, but even the Dalton Kincaid pick was an overdraft, you know? And so at some point you got to realize that maybe people bringing up the wide receiver thing over and over again is for a reason, Brandon. Like, maybe there's a reason that they're doing this. And so hopefully they address it. The Keon Coleman stuff today was wild to me.
Yes.
With him still being on the team, like, talk about horrible for team morale in general, you know, like that, them just straight up talking about Coleman being a bust, like, out loud, the owner interrupting the conversation and saying, well, that wasn't Beane's pick. That was the coach. That was more on the coaching staff. Meanwhile, there's a video of Brandon Beane last year
at the combine
talking about, well, this is like in like a back room with like the front office. And he's talking about how Keon Coleman, how he was happy that Keon Coleman ran a slow 40 because that allowed him to get him. Yeah. If you didn't care to get him, you would not be saying that about Keon Coleman, right? And then the other funny part was that he comped that slowness to Gabe Davis being slow.
Yes.
which just goes to show that he has no idea how to evaluate wide receivers. On top of that, the Bills notoriously over the last handful of years have just continuously brought in these slot guys while also extending Khalil Shakir on that team, which he is. Khalil Shakir is a great slot player, right? But again, he's limited. He's not going to play inside out. Like, that's just not his game. And so when you like a guy like Keon Coleman, there were a lot of people, Matt Harmon being one of them, who said Keon Coleman is a big slot. That's where he should play. And that's probably where he should play after seeing him play on the outside over the last 2 years. And it seems like everyone outside of Buffalo in that front office realizes that. So I think McDermott should land on his feet. Like, I still think he's a pretty good head coach. He really turned that franchise around too. Like props to him on like a really good tenure there. But yeah, the like retaining Bean and keeping Bean is just wild to me.
I went back and looked at that draft because Keon Coleman was the first pick of the second round.
Yeah, he went right before Ladd McConkey.
Right. So if it was not Ladd McConkey, the list of receivers in that second round, Jalen Polk was one, 80 Mitchell, Corley was the next one.
Yeah.
Jermaine Burton.
Remember they traded out of the first round though in that draft.
Yeah.
And that's when the Chiefs went up and got Xavier Worthy,
right.
Which, you can question whether he's like it or not, but I think any team would rather have Xavier Worthy at this point than Keon Coleman.
Yeah, Pearsall. All right. The Patriots path continues. You talked about the Bo Nix injury. Broncos fans had maybe a few hours to celebrate before the world came just crashing.
It's more like minutes. It came out like right after. Yeah, I do want to say one thing about the Patriots is that there's a lot of people that are still like on them about the teams that they faced this year, right? And like how they've had such an easy path. In my opinion, the only way that narrative wouldn't exist right now is if the Bills had won and they would have to play Josh Allen, because the AFC was more or less terrible. Yeah. Maybe Jacksonville, you could argue if they had to play if Jacksonville would have won and then New England played Jacksonville in round 2 in the divisional round, and that was a more complete team, whatever the case may be. I mean, they're beating who they have to beat. Like, yeah. I still think the Patriots are a pretty good team. And, this isn't this, we knew this going into the playoffs. It was a weak overall pool of teams and any team could do it. So why can't the Patriots do it? I mean, I think we should expect the Patriots to win. I don't know if they beat the spread, but I think that they should be expected to win. And I think that the NFC team is going to be the favorite in the Super Bowl, but any given Sunday, man, I mean, it could still happen. And it would be a crazy, crazy story with your boy, Mike Vrabel getting that W if it happens.
Man. I mentioned it on the Swolecast yesterday, but me dapping up Vrabel at the Super Bowl at Radio Row.
Yeah, but that's you assuming that he probably wouldn't be around Radio Row.
Oh, well, I'll go find him. Yeah. It's like the Tiger Woods big dog meme. Big dog. Like, hey, I'm proud of you. Harold Landry, I'm proud of you, bro. Yeah. All right. Charbonnet, torn ACL. What this late in the season, what does this mean for Kenneth Walker going into next season?
Well, it's weird because Walker's a free agent. And so now we have a really big question of what Seattle's going to do, with Walker. You could spin this a lot of different ways. You could spin this as a good thing for Walker because now, they have a higher chance of re-signing him. And if they re-sign him, Zach Charbonnet is not going to be ready probably until mid-season at the earliest and ready as in like being a legit contributor to that offense. And so we could get Bell Cow Walker in a hypothetically good offense. I think Clint Kubiak's going to be gone. We would assume he's going to get a head coaching gig, but in a hypothetically decent offense environment. And we know that Walker in a bell cow role can be really valuable from a fantasy perspective. Now, the downside, if you want to look at this negatively, maybe we don't want Seattle to re-sign him. And now there's a higher chance that they re-sign him because they try to keep him because of the Charbonnet injury. Because realistically, wouldn't we want Kenneth Walker to go somewhere where he could, definitely be a bell cow, like definitely be that player? So I think that this could go in a lot of different directions from like a value standpoint. I'd probably lean like it's just better for Walker from a fantasy perspective in general because there's one less player to kind of worry about and deal with. And then Charbonnet, I've always been a Charbonnet guy. Like I think that he's a really solid back. He's not like elite, but he's always been like a James Conner type where he can just do everything and just get it done. Yeah.
He's had a good season as far as like just touchdowns and everything else.
I think a lot of people just get frustrated. Like whenever there's a player digging, it's kind of like Tyler Algier with Bijan Robinson.
Yes.
Like everyone hates Tyler Algier, but it's like, okay, but he's still a pretty good running back overall, even though it's frustrating. So, and look, like Kenneth Walker's not Bijan Robinson either, you know? So, there's at least some reason to be using sharps, maybe not as much as they did in that 2025 season, but yeah, it's a sad injury. And, you know, the one thing that I'm very much looking forward to is seeing if Velus Jones gets any touches this weekend, because after the Bears lost, Velus Jones tweeted a laughing, crying emoji, which is crazy because the dude was absolutely horrific in Chicago. Like not only a bust
at like age 24. I mean,
day 2 bust. And then just someone made a low lights highlight, you know, clip and put it together and quote tweeted it and stuff. And, no shade to Velus Jones for having a really bad time in Chicago. Like he's better than me at football, but don't like rock the boat like that whenever you were clearly a detriment to that team. Like, what are you doing, man? So I kind of want to see him get some touches and see what maybe happens if karma comes back and bites him a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, they got him, they got Shaheed, obviously, Hulani's on IR, and Kenneth Walker. He's just, watching him out there, it's just like a proud dad. Like, hey, I wasn't wrong. I was just early on him this season. Like me drafting him in the 4th or 5th round this year. That's why,
I feel like I've never been right on Kenneth Walker.
Yes. I
was right from a dynasty perspective the first couple of years. And then I was wrong last year. And then I was wrong this year because I thought that he should be drafted where he was being drafted. But yeah, just the way it goes in fantasy.
Mike 24 says this is why you don't draft until week 20.
Yeah,
there you go.
True.
Yeah, real late in the season. Okay, JJ. Last week I had the question of, man, how many head coaches and offensive coordinators our team's going to have, and I couldn't really find a list, so I just decided to put it together myself. So what we have is a list right here for our audio listeners of teams, and then the head coaches, and then the offensive coordinators next to them. Let's talk about some fantasy relevant stuff, because really a lot of that stuff is with the offensive coordinators. Mm-hmm. Mike McDaniel going to the Chargers.
Amazing.
Yes.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Like the one thing that's going to be interesting is this shift from a run game perspective, the Chargers with Greg Roman would run a lot of power, a lot of those like man schemes. And then this is going to be more of a zone scheme with Mike McDaniel coming from that Shanahan Kubiak tree. Right. And so what's that going to look like? I have some numbers that I'll share in a little bit in the main event about that, but I think that's going to be a little interesting. And then the one thing that's like a McDaniel staple is the motion that he uses to get and free up wide receivers. And he's been doing that obviously in Miami. Like last year, I think they were first in the league in motion. And like 2 years ago, they were second in the league. So use a ton of motion, and you do it in Miami when you have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. You could argue though, this is like a much more robust situation right now in LA with QJ, Ladd, and Trey Harris, who's going to be a second-year guy who I think is kind of an interesting name to keep in mind. And then, Rondé Gadsden doing what he did as a receiving tight end. And then you have this backfield, and then you have these offensive linemen that are going to be coming back, and Slater and Alt. And you're just like, I mean, he's a good, smart mind in the league. And even if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know if his scheme will naturally, like he's going to make it work. I just feel confident in that because I think he's a good coach. So I think McDaniel to the Chargers is going to look at the splits with Tua and how his yards per attempt went up. Justin Herbert already has a really nice floor with yards per attempt. Like if that increases at all, that Chargers offense could look really, really good. I'm very excited. I couldn't figure out and craft the right tweet for this, but I was like something along the lines of like me betting the Chargers to win the Super Bowl for the 11th straight year. Like they're always like but I do feel like this is a really, really complete team that could be on the field next year.
Yeah. And just from entertaining, they're going to get all the primetime games, because just that team with those weapons, and then Harbaugh and McDaniel.
Yeah, the dynamic between McDaniel and Harbaugh is awesome. I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah. Yes. All right. I got Petsing Zoo in Detroit. Drew Petzing, the Lions offensive coordinator.
Yeah, my immediate reaction was like, this is dumb. But then, digging into it a little bit more, I'll have some data on this later as well. But he has put together decent run games, and obviously that's a staple in Detroit and what Dan Campbell wants to do. And I think that's part of the reason why McDaniel, they didn't see him as a fit, is because they just have different kind of run schemes and ways that they would want to run that offense. So I'll have more on Petzing. I don't think it's like a slam dunk hire like McDaniel, but I think it's fine.
Yeah. And then the Chiefs, they love to recycle their coordinators. They hired Eric Bieniemy as their new offensive coordinator.
He was at least better than Matt Nagy. I mean, Matt Nagy came in and literally just torpedoed that offensive efficiency. And for your perspective, you got to be very happy that, the Titans hired Robert Saleh instead of going after Nagy, because that would have been rough. I just don't understand why he's a head coaching candidate. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. They said like he learned some things, and I think it really is his relationship with some guys that were in that Chiefs front office that are now with the Titans. But yeah, as far as the head coach, the Giants get a Harbaugh. We already knew that. Falcons get Stefanski. And the fun thing with some of these coaching hires is you look at some of the drama. If you look at it through like a pro wrestling lens, which I'm not like, I used to watch pro wrestling when I was like a teenager.
Me too. But D-Generation X and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the motions, but yeah. So, but
you can tell us what to do. You think you can tell us what to wear?
Sorry, keep going.
But I mean, this is what it is with Stefanski and the Baker Mayfield drama, because
awesome.
Stefanski's in Cleveland.
Everyone's like, oh, it's so unprofessional for Ben Johnson to say F the Packers in the locker room. And it's like, guys, this is sports. They're competitive people. Let Baker Mayfield have this chip on his shoulder about Kevin Stefanski and the breakup that he had in Cleveland, because it's going to make for better drama and television, which is why we watch sports. That's why did we all love watching Indiana just win the national championship? Because of the story. It had everything to do with the story. That's it. It wasn't the fact that we fell in love with that individual school. It's a story and how how everything came together, and the players on that team and the coaching on that team. It's no different in the NFL. Like you want drama, even if you don't think you want the drama. You want it.
Yeah. Yeah. Baker said yesterday, failed is quite the reach, because someone said that his failed experience in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield. And Baker quote tweeted with, "Failed is quite the reach, pal. Still waiting on a text call from him after I got shipped off like a piece of garbage. Yeah. Can't wait to see you twice a year, coach." Yes. Yes. Give me all that drama. And
it's
then
awesome, especially because like no matter what happens, like there's going to be something that comes from it. It's going to be hilarious. Like that's right. Like either Baker destroys them and Kevin Stefanski looks like a moron, or Baker gets destroyed and he looks like a moron. And that's why we're watching this, because we want to see, we're watching sports to watch people conquer something that we don't think is possible, and to just to beat up on one another in a contained environment where no one's really hurt. It's just fun to watch. Like we want that drama.
And then the other one is Robert Saleh now playing Liam Cohen twice a year, because they had the handshake drama with Jacksonville and San Fran, when Liam said, "Keep my name out your mouth." And I think Saleh like threatened to kill Cohen.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
We mess his world up. Yeah.
Like I don't watch the NBA that much, but I know that people love the NBA because it hasn't happened as much recently, but there's a lot of like just stories and stuff off the court. And this is the NFL needs stuff like this. It's great for the game.
100%. As far as these other coaching jobs, Bills, Ravens, Steelers, Raiders, Cardinals, Browns. What are we hoping for as just like offensive coordinators for these guys? Like Bills and Ravens, they've got franchise QBs.
I think the Ravens are going to they're going to be the ones who get Minter.
Yeah.
And then I think the Bills get Kubiak. And I think the Steelers get Shula. And then the Raiders are probably next to get, and then like the Cardinals and Browns, who know, like they're
whatever.
Like the Cardinals could get Matt Nagy or something, or like Arthur Smith or something like that, and no one will. Yeah.
Seeing the Ballers melt down after Nagy or Smith is their head coach.
If Arthur Smith goes there, I mean, it'd be
worth the price.
Be good for the memes. Yeah.
Yes. All right. With that being said, let's get on to today's data.
Today's data.
So I meant to do this last week with the quarterback stuff, but this is showing you which players outperformed ADP expectation most and least this season. I'm only looking at relevant games. I'm going to start doing this more often. This is partially something that I just think is smarter to do, but also I've gotten the request from a lot of people to just remove the final game of the season because it's so weird with, some teams playing for things,
tanking and everything.
some players not playing, whatever. And so the players that outperform ADP expectation most are at the top. So Christian McCaffrey leads the list. Cam Scadaboo, I did have a minimum 8 games played. He played 8 games. Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Gainwell, Rico Dowdle, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, James Cook, Quinshon Judkins, Bijan Robinson. Those are the guys who were the league winners, if you will, at running back this year, which I think you look at that list and you're like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Like those are the guys who outperform their ADP most. And then the guys on the opposite side, Alvin Kamara, Isaiah Pacheco, and then there's a lot of like late rounders who just didn't do anything, which is why they're on this list. So like Ray Davis, Trevor Etienne had some ADP, DJ Giddens as like a backup to Jonathan Taylor, Will Shipley, Taj Brooks. So all those rookies who just didn't do anything because they never got an opportunity. Tank Bigsby, who got traded. So obviously that's why, his name's on there. Isaac Guerrero, again, backup who just didn't do anything. And then Caleb Johnson.
Hurt.
Yeah, but he still wouldn't have done anything because Christian McCaffrey. And then Caleb Johnson was the worst draft pick at running back by far this past year. And I can at least walk away from redraft this past year and say that I did have Jaylen Warren over Caleb Johnson, and I had Jaylen Warren as the guy to target in that backfield. So at least I got some stuff wrong. Even on this list, I got some stuff wrong, but at least that part I did get right.
Yeah. I mean, if we would have known that Christian McCaffrey would be the last man standing there in San Francisco.
One thing I am mad about, and this is one of those like, sure, JJ, was that when I first did the draft guide, I had Christian McCaffrey as a player to target, and I removed it right before we launched the guide. I had the blurb written and everything because it was kind of hard to just be like, guys, if he plays, he's great, and you should. Yeah. So I just kept him in the same tier 1 as all the other guys, so at least I had him there. But I do wish I was more aggressive with CMC from like letting him. Let it be known that you should be drafting him this year.
This is my second year in a row not drafting Alvin Kamara. It went terribly 2 years ago. This year it was much better. So that was one of the things. And then you look at these guys; they just didn't get a chance. These rookies.
Yeah, I don't think there's any problem in throwing darts at DJ Giddens or Will Shipley, whoever the case. It's
Taj Brooks, even
it's not a bad idea to throw those darts. It's just that the guys in front of them didn't get hurt, and that's just the way it goes. But I will say that historically, when you look at league winners from the later rounds, they're not just pure handcuffs. It's just not. Usually, those are the guys that you can get them in best ball. It's a little bit different, but in a regular redraft league, when you can pick guys up off the waiver wire, throw those darts more at players who might get opportunity right away because you're just going to be stashing those handcuffs. You're going to drop them first, and then that injury happens week 9, and you're like, "Well, I drafted Taj Brooks," but it's kind of a waste of a roster spot because those injuries aren't guaranteed to happen in the first couple weeks of the season.
All right, JJ, let's get on to what people want, and that is your hard, fast, never changing, too early running back rankings.
The late round main event.
Let's start with number 1, the guy that probably won you some championships. He won me my home league last year. Bijan Robinson at number 1.
Yeah, I figured I'd go 1 to 10 because I think it's more dramatic that way. I did 10 to 1 last week, but everyone knew who number 1 was going to be. It's just not as fun. So we'll go Bijan Robinson at number 1. He's been the RB3, RB2 in the last 2 seasons. My untrained eye, maybe it's trained, I don't know. I think Bijan Robinson is one of the best running backs I've ever watched in my life. Period. Like I've said this for years in the Discord and in the live streams and stuff for patrons, but I'm just a massive Bijan Robinson fan as a player. His contact balance is unreal. I can't even comprehend it. But he's been RB3 and RB2 over the last 2 years. That's in relevant weeks. Last 2 seasons, 67%, 65% running back rush shares. He had a 19.8% target share last year, which is awesome. The receiving numbers are something that you should really focus on for running backs year over year because they're stickier than a lot of the rushing numbers are. And then the other thing that's kind of a wild card, obviously you get a new coaching staff, so we don't know exactly how this backfield is going to look and be split. But Tyler Algier is a free agent. So if he doesn't re-sign, chances are whatever running back is the RB2 there is an inferior player to Tyler Algier. So I think Bijan Robinson is the easy 101 in all formats next year. Well, maybe not super flex, but in half PPR, whatever the case may be, I'd be taking him over any wide receiver next season.
They also hired Bill Callahan, who is like one of the best offensive line coaches.
At some point, like when does that like not be the case anymore?
I don't know, because after he left Tennessee with his son, the offensive line actually got better, but who knows what that is. All right, number 2, Jahmyr Gibbs. He's in the petting zoo.
I think that Gibbs is probably the 102 in redraft next year. These two guys are just so locked in my opinion, as like such solid cornerstones for your redraft teams. And they're so safe that it's hard to kind of go against them and go away from them. So Drew Petzing, his teams in Arizona have been 8th, 9th, and 15th in rushing success rate over his 3 seasons there, which is pretty strong. This season was a little bit of an outlier. They were first in the NFL in dropbacks over expected. They were usually a lot more run heavy, which is again plays into why I think Detroit and Dan Campbell really liked him, because that's kind of his style. He's a run game guy and he likes to lean on the run. Gibbs is obviously a talented player, 17% target share this past year, 60% running back rush share. Both were career highs. The Lions can cut David Montgomery this offseason and save money against the cap. And that's huge because Montgomery's been taking looks at the goal line. And again, it's hard to imagine a scenario where the running back that would come in for Montgomery would be significantly better or even as good as Montgomery is. So Gibbs is more than likely going to have more inferior competition in his backfield, and that would lead to a lot more goal line looks. Like last year, he had 10 goal line rushes. Montgomery had 16. Imagine if Gibbs doubles his goal line work. I mean, that's crazy to think about in terms of what his ceiling could be. So to me, the 101, 102, they're in a tier. Like it's this could obviously change, but to me, it's very obvious that these two guys are the guys that you're going to want in fantasy next year.
All right. I guess you're not worried about the electromagnetic fields in San Francisco because you've got CMC at number 3, Christian McCaffrey.
Well, I mean, to be fair, my first words in the notes are unbelievably worried. So I am worried about Christian McCaffrey. He had 311 rush attempts and 129 targets this past year. That doesn't even count the playoffs. Like that's obscene. It's crazy. That's definitely not repeatable. I wrote, I don't know if you remember this, Kitchen, but I did that article and that sort of like mini study on Saquon Barkley this offseason and this summer, where I talked about how people were thinking about regression the wrong way with these guys who see a lot of work the previous year. They shouldn't think of it in terms of injury, right? Which people will naturally do with Christian McCaffrey, and I will too. Like if there's fear of injury in any running back, especially one who's older and has somewhat of a history. But the bigger deal is that when a running back just sees a lot of volume, they're almost definitely going to not see a lot of volume the next year because that just naturally regresses. Just like if a wide receiver, Brandon Marshall one year in Chicago had like a 40% target share in that offense, which is the highest that we've seen since 2011. We don't sit there and say, oh, B Marsh is just going to walk into the next season and see just as much volume. We say, no, that was something that offense just needed in that moment, and it's probably going to regress. And that's exactly how I feel about Christian McCaffrey, where he's still going to see a lot of volume, though. Like regression doesn't mean irrelevancy, and the offense itself is really good, and you can't deny the results. Christian McCaffrey in relevant games from a finished points per game ranking standpoint in seasons where he's been healthy, RB1, 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 RB2, RB2, and RB12. And that RB12 is his rookie season. That is insane. It's insane. Like, to me, fantasy football, yes, you can lose it in if you lose your first round pick, if he gets hurt, that's bad. But instead of thinking about it with CMC from his perspective of like Christian McCaffrey, he could get hurt and therefore he's a bad pick. Think about the delta between Christian McCaffrey getting hurt in those chances to another alternative in that round. And then you realize that delta, it shrinks. It's not nearly as catastrophic as you think that it is. And that's why I have him at RB3. But I will say right now, I would have him in a separate tier compared to Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. Can't
wait for the Jordan James of next season. He looked great in garbage time. So there you go. Okay. Jonathan Taylor comes in at number 4.
Yeah, again, I actually think that running back, like, it's really, really flat after you get out of the top two. Maybe you throw CMC in there, but like, I say flat as in like there's just a lot of running backs we can choose from, which plays into what I talked about on Tuesday's episode this week on the increase in 12 personnel. And, running backs are getting more work on the ground. It's been a more run heavy approach across the league. And that's definitely allowing more running backs to be relevant at a higher level than before. And so Jonathan Taylor, this isn't the archetype of running back that I am in love with, because he's maxed out an 11% target share throughout his career, which isn't, it's fine, but it's not elite. But we know that he is an elite runner. He's got that like Nick Chubb in him where he can consistently kind of break the mold of being an overly efficient running back year over year. But, you look at the Colts, like there's quarterback question marks because of the Achilles with Daniel Jones. But at the same time, Jonathan Taylor being on the roster, we know he's, being healthy and active, he's going to see a lot of work. He's been at almost an 80% running back rush share per season over his last 5 years, which is crazy. So, the volume should be there. I do think that we should be a little bit worried about some regression from like an offensive standpoint, just because we don't know what's going on at quarterback. That scares me a little bit, especially at the goal line. He had 23 goal line rushes last year, which was the second most of his career. That was the most of his career. I said 23 goal line attempts last year were a season high. That's really terrible note taking. That doesn't make any sense. I think it was the second most goal line attempts that he's had throughout his career. You need that offense to be good enough for him to be sustainable in fantasy. And we saw that down the stretch, right? Like the offense became a lot shakier, and then Jonathan Taylor's fantasy output became a lot shakier. That's what happens when you don't have a receiving back in the backfield in like a half or full PPR format. So I think he's good. I think he's solid. But I'm not going to take him in like the top 6 of fantasy drafts next year at this point, like right now here in January.
All right. Number 5, you got Mr. Achane.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, you could put Achane at 3 realistically, like if you're bullish about what could happen in that offense, but there is some concern. There's a new coaching staff. We don't know how Achane's going to be deployed. He has had 15 and 19% target shares over his last 2. So that PPR floor hypothetically should be there. But only 5 rushes at the goal line last year. Like that's a problem, because what happens if a coach comes in and says, we don't want to use, we want to have you in a tandem because you're a smaller running back. One of the amazing parts of Mike McDaniel was that he said Devon Achane can be sub 190 at the combine and maybe sub 195 in the NFL and sub 200. And I'll still use him as a borderline bell cow back because I think he's really good. Not all coaches have that mentality. And that's what's scary, in my opinion, for Devon Achane with a new coaching staff. But unbelievably explosive. He had the most 10 plus yards in the NFL 10 plus yard runs in the NFL this past year. One of 13 running backs since 2011 with 200 or more carries and a 16% 10 plus yard run rate, which is awesome. But also, like, we don't know who's playing quarterback for Miami. That's another problem there for the Dolphins. So yeah, I mean, like, I think Achane's fine, but there are a lot of question marks.
Okay, I mean, he's definitely got the talent. It's just
like, I love. Yeah,
is he going to be in when they're down by 3 touchdowns? Maybe not. With this new coach. All right, James Cook comes in at number 6, and again, they don't have a head coach either.
I actually think that the coaching could be okay for Cook, mostly because we need to see him be used more as a receiver. He still is he's maxed out at a 9.9% target share in a given season. When he entered the NFL as sort of like a receiving specialist, like that's what we thought he was going to do. This past year, though, he saw a lot of work on the ground. And that's kind of the way that the Buffalo Bills ran their offense with Joe Brady, a lot of runs, sub 50% pass rate last year. It was 52% the year prior. So my thing is, like, what if a coach comes in and they want to feature James Cook more as a receiver? Like, that could be really good from a fantasy perspective. And for a second straight year, all of his peripherals look great. Like, I think James Cook is an elite running back in this league. Very, very good. And hopefully the next coaching staff sees that too. Like, I think realistically, if the right match occurs for Buffalo and James Cook, he could just be bumped ahead of some of the guys ahead of him right now.
Okay. This one's one I'm excited about. Number 7, Marion Hampton.
Yeah. I think that
he's going to get steamed up, man. He is going to, like, everyone's going to be in on
more
Marion
than
Hampton.
But you look at the remaining running backs and you're like, you could throw an established guy in here, like a Josh Jacobs or like a Saquon or something like that. But to me, You get Slater and Alt hopefully back in 2026. There's no more Greg Roman. And for the record, I wrote about this all offseason last year. Greg Roman is not good for fantasy running backs, generally speaking. He still has not had a single season in his career as a coordinator where his running backs ranked in the top 10 as a team in PPR points. Now, part of that is the target share stuff I discussed, etc. Hampton, to me, was a pretty decent, well-rounded back. There's no red flags to his receiving profile that I saw. Like his yards per route run was solid enough this past year. It was over 1 yard. He had a 12% target share when he did play. And then, I did write all that too and looked at all that data before they had gotten Mike McDaniel, which I don't think is even official yet, but we're just assuming it is.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how Hampton's going to fit the zone run scheme the way that Mike McDaniel runs things. And if you look at fantasy points data, he was a lot better in more man runs than zone runs last year. Marion Hampton was, but he's really good. And I think that LA is going to use a lot more motion and it's going to help the offensive line even more. The Chargers with Greg Roman were below average last year in their use of motion, which is kind of crazy given the kinds of wide receivers they had on that team that could go inside out, and they didn't really, take advantage of that. So I'm excited for Marion Hampton in this offense, especially because Najee Harris, like I don't even know what's gonna if he's gonna be a thing next year for them. I know his deal was short anyway, but I'm saying what kind of competition are they gonna they're probably gonna be fine with Hampton and Vidal. And if that's the case, I don't think that's terrible competition for Marion Hampton to get volume.
Okay, number 8, you got Ashton Jeanty, who's we are pretty sure we know who his quarterback is. We don't know who his head coach or offensive coordinator is going to be.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on at quarterback for them. We'll see. If they
don't get Mendoza, there's something.
I'm assuming they will. Yeah.
Did you watch that game, by the way?
The national championship?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So there were some fantasy analysts that did not. So
why would I have not watched that?
This is what I'm saying. That performance was awesome.
He's one of those that you got to be a little fearful of. Does he have the tools? But he's got the intangibles for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it was a kind of a problematic first season for Ashton Jeanty. He had 0.64 yards before contact according to PFF data. That was second worst among 200 plus attempt rushers. It was only better than Quinshon Judkins last year. And so, he didn't get a lot of help from the offense itself. I still thought that he looked good when he did get those opportunities, and he started to be used as a receiver more towards the end of the season, which was really helpful from a fantasy perspective, but also an evaluation standpoint. We know he can be a 3-down back. He was an elite prospect. He looks great in even the updated ZAP model that I've worked on. He looks amazing. He's one of the best in that model. If you look at, there's a new category, speaking of that model, there's a new category that I created called legendary performer, where only the best of the best prospects land in that bucket. Ashton Jeanty landed in that bucket. The other 7 running backs to get to that mark, their worst season, they had a best season in their first 3 at worst. Okay. Of 17 PPR points. It's very hard to
That's very, when you say best and worst in the same sentence, it's hard. Yeah.
So if you look at their first 3 seasons in the NFL, their best season at worst among those 7 was Trent Richardson, who was a legendary performer. Yes, it's probably a model L, but he was fine his rookie season. He scored 16.99 PPR points per game. That's the worst. That's the absolute bottom. So I'm predicting that we're going to see a better season from Ashton Jeanty in one of these next couple of seasons, just based on the ZAP model itself.
All right. Number 9, I want to know your thought process on this guy. Was it hard to do? Because it's Chase Brown.
Yeah, kind of. But it's one of those things where right now in January, there's so much that's unchanged in Cincinnati. Yeah. The coaching staff looks generally the same. Dan Pitcher might be able to get an OC job because he doesn't call plays in Cincinnati, and he might get that opportunity somewhere else. So if
he goes, they expect Callahan to come back to Cincinnati.
All right, well, then that's fine too.
Yeah.
So, but with Chase Brown, bottom line is they have a lot of holes to fill, and it might just be another year where they don't really address the running back position early on in the draft. And I thought Brown, it's kind of wild, the narrative around Brown in fantasy.
Yeah.
Because of the first few weeks of the season, he was a great fantasy asset. with Joe Burrow last year. Now there's a lot of factors that play into this. Samaje Perine being hurt. It wasn't just Flacco and Burrow. You had Jake Browning as well in there. But regardless, out of the split, so not with Joe Burrow, he averaged 14.1 PPR points per game, which is not that bad. It's not great, but it's not terrible. 19.4 PPR points per game with Joe Burrow. So there's a lot of upside with Chase Brown, especially if they don't do anything in the draft or free agency and such. And I don't think that they need to, at this point. It's a good environment. Hopefully they upgrade that offensive line. That's obviously one of their biggest issues. That's their biggest issue on offense. But yeah, I have Chase Brown at number 9. I think that it's a very defensible ranking for him. I could argue
you can go higher.
Yeah, I could argue him at 7 or 6. Yeah.
I mean, he was going right there with Achane before last season. BS Perf says, I think we've been saying they should upgrade the line for about 6 years now. They need to protect their assets.
They've tried a little bit. It hasn't come together yet.
All right. And then number 10, we've got Josh Jacobs to round out this list.
I think that this is where you kind of could throw any of the veteran backs in there, Saquon, Derrick Henry, whoever. But with Jacobs, he's just, of those other guys, he's in the most secure environment right now. Say what you want about Matt LaFleur. His teams in his 7 years of coaching that offense and that team, they've ranked the top half of the league in touchdowns per game every single year, which is pretty impressive. We know the offensive environment should be pretty good for Jacobs. He was banged up this past year. He still saw 73% running back rush share. So I'm going to go Jacobs in the 10 spot, but I could argue maybe a Saquon because hopefully there's an offensive upgrade from a coaching standpoint there. Maybe Derrick Henry because obviously he hasn't slowed down yet and there could be even an upgrade there. But I think Jacobs is just the safest bet at this point.
Yeah. Interesting that you leave off the guy who helped win you $20,000 on DraftKings.
Look, I'll forever love Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I'm just saying you maybe just put him as an honorable mention. Jeez. All right. Good stuff. I mean, that's a solid list right there. We know that we're not going to hold you.
This one's not. I feel like this one shouldn't be that controversial. The way that I put this, like maybe. Do you think people are going to be mad that like Chase Brown's on there?
No, again, because I think Chase Brown with Burrow could go even higher. Like, I mean,
I agree. Yeah,
it just depends on what the play calling is going to be there. No, I think it's a solid list. People might get upset with no Saquon.
But I don't know. Saquon burned people so much this year that they're probably over it.
Yeah, he just needed a rest year. All right. All right, a reminder to subscribe, like, comment on this show if you would. Late round newsletter. We had another newsletter today come out, so it's newsletter season. I'll be sending the other newsletter on Friday. JJ?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Gadula is doing a lot of like research and studies on stuff, and it's been great. And today's was awesome about the playoffs and basically like are players who play a lot and go on these long runs in the playoffs, is that bad for their games played the following season? Like, is there a higher injury risk, and what's it mean for them from a fantasy perspective? And so just get used to that awesome kind of research because Gadula is going to be sending a lot of newsletters out this offseason.
Speaking of awesome, if you don't do one thing, I don't know if this got enough love yesterday, but if you don't do one thing, we'll just say, if you only do one thing, listen to yesterday's episode of the Late Round podcast, The Death of the Wide Receiver 2. That was a good episode, JJ. Good job by you, pal.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Final words, JJ.
No, let's hope for power to stick around for us.
Yes,
so you guys won't be getting as much content next week. Just pay attention to my Twitter feed. I'll let you guys know if we lost power, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Hopefully it won't be that bad. JJ, appreciate it. And appreciate everyone that chimed in. And without further ado, we'll see you next time here on the Late Round Fantasy Football Show. Peace.